104. Just think about that number for a second. 104 matches. That's what we're going to see at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. It's just an absolutely staggering, unprecedented scale for a single sporting event, right? And honestly, it's going to completely rewrite the rule book on how this entire tournament is played, how it's managed, and ultimately how it's won. So welcome to this explainer. I'm super thrilled you're here with us today because we are breaking down the 2026 World Cup. Now, this isn't just another tournament cycle. It is literally the dawn of the era of expansion. We're going to dive deep into the data, these crazy new formats, and some seriously hidden challenges to figure out exactly how this massive event is fundamentally changing the beautiful game. All right, let's look at our roadmap for this explainer. First, a history of expansion. Second, the 48-team format. Third, new rules on the pitch. Fourth, the geographical nightmare. And finally, number 5, the winners and losers. Let's jump right in. Okay, Section 1, a history of expansion. You know, to really wrap our heads around this massive leap to 48 teams, we kind of need to look backward first. Football has constantly evolved from this small experimental gathering into the absolute global spectacle that we all know today. Picture this. Back in 1930, the very first World Cup down in Uruguay, it featured just 13 teams. It was simple, it was compact, and they didn't even have qualification rounds. Then, by 1954, it stabilized a bit at 16 teams. Fast forward to 1982, and we get the first major modern jump to 24 teams, which crucially opened the door for more African and Asian countries to join the party. Then came 1998, bringing us the 32-team format. That's the one most of us probably consider the classic structure, right? And it gave us incredible stability for basically 2 decades. But look, expansion has always been baked right into the sport's DNA, usually driven by this push for global representation and, of course, commercial growth. And well, that brings us to the massive jump we're seeing for 2026.
Moving on to Section 2, the 48-team format.
So here's the big question. How on earth do you organize a tournament with 48 different nations without the whole thing just completely descending into chaos? Well, the math gives us a brand new knockout phase. Instead of the usual 8 groups, we're blowing it up to a massive 12 groups of 4 teams. The top 2 teams from each of those 12 groups will advance, which gives us 24 teams. But to make a knockout bracket actually work, you gotta have 32. So what happens? The 8 best third-place finishers across all those groups are also gonna advance. And this right here is what introduces a massive, brand new round of 32 knockout phase. With 48 teams and a cutthroat single elimination format from the round of 32 onwards, the margins for progression have literally never been tighter. It's gonna be wild. Up next, Section 3, new rules on the pitch. Now, the changes we're seeing aren't just happening in the brackets. With 104 matches packed onto the schedule, the sheer mind-boggling scale of this tournament actually forced IFAB, football's lawmaking body, to step in. They've introduced some seriously strict new anti-delay regulations just to keep the game flowing. They are heavily targeting time wasting this time around. For example, referees are now going to start a visible 5-second countdown for throw-ins and goal kicks. If you delay, boom, immediate turnover. The other team either gets the ball or a corner kick. And when you make a substitution, that exiting player has exactly 10 seconds to get off the pitch using the nearest boundary line. No more slow walks to the dugout. Also, if a player goes down injured and actually needs treatment, they've got to leave the field and wait a mandatory 1 minute on the sideline before they can even think about coming back on. Oh, and goalkeepers, they're now on a strict 8-second limit for holding the ball. Every single one of these rules is laser focused on heavily penalizing delays to just keep the action moving. Okay, on top of the pace of play stuff, we're also seeing a major clarification to the DOGSO rule. And if you need a quick refresher, that stands for denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. Under the old rule, if a player committed a DOGSO foul, but the ref played advantage and a goal was still scored anyway, the offending player was still going to get a yellow card. Well, the new rule changes this completely. Now, 0 caution is given if that advantage actually results in an immediate goal. It's a really fascinating shift in exactly how those advantages are penalized, and it could definitely change how defenders calculate risks in real time.
All right, Section 4, the geographical nightmare.
Now let's shift gears to what might honestly be the single most decisive factor of this entire tournament. The 2026 World Cup is spanning 16 host cities across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And because of that, it's introducing this hidden, grueling opponent that every single team has to face. So I want you to ask yourself, which team do you think faces the toughest physical toll? Look, when you spread a tournament out across an entire continent, travel isn't just some background detail anymore. It becomes a massive competitive factor. Analysts have actually been using the Haversine formula, which is a way to calculate as the crow flies flight distances to map out the exact routes to the final. And let me tell you, the disparities they found are absolutely shocking. Just look at this. The travel inequality is massive. As co-hosts, Mexico gets this incredibly compact route. If they win their group and make it all the way to the final, they're traveling just over 5,000 kilometers. Not bad, right? But then contrast that with the USA, another co-host. They are facing a hefty 10,500 kilometers thanks to a really heavy West Coast start. And then look at tournament favorite Spain. Even if Spain wins their group, they are looking at a brutal 12,593 kilometer slog. They'd start all the way in Atlanta, jump down to Mexico, and then face these punishing coast-to-coast flights between Los Angeles and Dallas in the knockouts. It's exhausting just thinking about it.
And to really see how this impacts a single team's fate, let's take the defending champions, Argentina. If they finish first in their group, their route is highly manageable, about 6,800 kilometers in a pretty smooth upward arc from the southeast right through the central US. But look what happens if they slip up and finish second. Their travel load just absolutely skyrockets to almost 11,000 kilometers. They'd be forced into this brutal, exhausting ping-pong route, literally flying back and forth between Los Angeles and Dallas. So finishing second doesn't just mean playing a harder opponent, it essentially means flying across the continent multiple extra times.
Because of this insane disparity, fatigue might literally be as decisive as form. We are talking about the largest travel inequality gap ever seen in World Cup history. Think about the jet lag, crossing all those time zones, racking up thousands of flight miles. All of that could dictate who lifts the trophy just as much as actual football talent on the pitch.
Which brings us to Section 5, Winners and Losers.
So with all these massive changes, the 48 teams, the new anti-delay rules, the incredibly grueling travel schedules, we kind of have to arrive at the final debate. Is this expansion actually good for the sport? Well, let's evaluate it impartially. Supporters of the expansion are quick to highlight the pros. More global representation means emerging nations finally get a chance to shine on the biggest stage, and it allows for some truly historic, unbelievable records. I mean, for instance, we recently saw 41-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo silence his critics by scoring 2 goals against Uzbekistan, officially making him the first player in history to score in 6 different World Cups. This expanded format lets legends play longer and gives new stars a platform, not to mention the massive commercial revenue growth for the sport. But on the flip side, critics bring up some equally valid concerns. They argue the cons, pointing out that adding 16 more teams could definitely lead to watered-down match quality, especially in the group stages. Plus, this whole new system of third-place advancements, it can create a really confusing format for casual fans trying to follow the math. And of course, as we just saw, those continent-spanning logistics create a level of grueling travel exhaustion that could seriously compromise player welfare.
All of which leaves us with this final, lingering thought. As these 104 matches unfold across 3 huge countries, and as these players are forced to battle both their opponents and the immense travel miles, we're all going to be watching closely to see the true impact of this expansion. So what do you think? Is a bigger World Cup actually a better World Cup? Keep that question in mind as the drama of 2026 really begins to play out. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today, and I really hope this deeper look helps you enjoy the tournament even more. Catch you next time.